On to item number 6, discuss and consider any action on a presentation and report from the 2021 Bond Committee regarding possible bond referendum for future city projects.
Thank you, Mayor Council. So back over just about a year ago, the City Council at the time created by resolution a bond committee. And it's a 12-person committee, and we had our first meeting in March of this year. And we continue to meet generally in the off weeks of City Council meetings, and had an opportunity to meet at length. A couple of council members had served on that, most notably Councilwoman Powers and Councilman Robertson. And I just wanted to list the names of those that served, to recognize them. Chairman of the committee was Mario Luna, Vice Chairman Nate Detmer, City Council Member Robbie Powers, City Council Member Jason Robertson, J.D. Ferguson, Mandy Hood, Brandy Westmoreland, Chad Carpenter, Clayton Hoy, Lisa King, and Corey McGee. Had a great opportunity to meet several times with these individuals, and it kind of first took a little bit of an exploratory measure to look at what are some of the needs from a capital projects point of view, looking at city facilities, city services, generally those things that you would see on a bond referendum. And got to see where some of those committee members, where their passions are, and really what they see as a need for the city of Forney moving forward. And so they've, in our last meeting was on November 9th, and so they took action to make a recommendation to the City Council, and that's what we want to be able to present to you tonight. So I want to first turn the time over to our Vice Chairman for that committee, Nate Detmer, and let him just give a few minutes to the Council.
And John, just to be clear, there's no action that we have to take at this time tonight. This is more of just an introduction of the results from the Bond Committee.
Correct. So with the recommendation, the Council will then have an opportunity to review, to have some deliberation, and potentially take action at a future meeting. When you're looking at a bond referendum, generally when it gets to the council, you want to be able to have at least a month or two to be able to mull it over and decide what if anything, if you're able to call, or if the desire is there to call a bond referendum, a local election. And then we need to make sure that that's done generally end of January, no later than the beginning of February, so that we can start preparing the ballot language and get that to the county so that we can have an election in May, if that's the time frame that the council wants to abide by.
Thank you. Mr. Detmer, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. I'm in a jolly mood. Got to come from Forney ISD third grade program tonight, so I apologize for being a little late. So I don't just look jolly, I am jolly. So thank you, Mr. Thatcher. Appreciate it. And Brian from WRA is here as well to help answer questions. So I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can through it. I don't like to take too much time for you. First, as we began in March, there were a lot of questions brought up from the committee members about what are our needs and wants here around Forney. We haven't done a bond since 2006, so it's been almost 15 years. Typically, bonds are done a little sooner than that in a lot of cities. These are for larger projects that we can't necessarily budget for as a city in our normal city budgets, and that's how we get some of the bigger things done, like road projects, public works types things, and parks, recreation, things like that. Our last bonds were a road bond package and a parks package in 2006. As see, Brian, if you don't mind going to facility space assessment, or do you want to? Oh, thank you. Brian's going to help me out here so I can. Those are my notes. Staff was absolutely wonderful in bringing to us a lot of information, as well as things that staff felt that was needed and wanted at this time. As we as a committee got to whittle down, really, I think the gist of what most of the committee members wanted was really what we need right now, because it's been so long since we've done the last bond. There's sure a lot of wants. And as Mr. Thatcher spoke to, as I serve on Parks Board as well, I'm passionate about our parks. But even the Parks Board recommendation came down the same thing. It's more of what we really need at this time as a city to continue to facilitate and grow this city and take care of our citizens and those that come to visit here. So as staff provided everything, we slowly whittled things down. One of the things that was brought to us was a survey. I don't know if you were told about the survey or familiar with it. Well, we'd had a community engagement. We had a total of 724 responses. which was quite surprising to all of us. Part of it was a QR code that was sent out, and it really boosted the engagement from our citizens. I think in previous surveys that I've seen in my time here in Forney, I don't think we've ever had that large of a response, so I was very pleased with that. It covered a lot of questions from our citizens, and this was all brought to the committee, and we looked at a lot of what we saw was what we kind of expected, as what we've heard from talking to those around town, as well as serving on different boards. And one of the biggest things, obviously, was our fire and recreation facilities is one of the big things that came back. We'll go over a little bit more about that as we proceed into this. Am I going too fast, or you got? No, I'm just making sure I cover everything.
And if I could jump in.
Yep, go ahead.
We have council following.
Oh, thanks.
Stop me anytime. I'll talk fast sometimes. So, if it was up to me, but here's the bond package. Bye. What the bond committee ultimately has made a recommendation to you is part of a kind of a 3-package system. We looked at both recommending a singular large bond package as one, or to break it up into multiples. If you break it down too much, we felt it might be a little confusing to the voters. So more of a 3-package bond that we could put to the citizens potentially. Again, this is completely up to you as council and how you want to move forward. But our recommendation was a Package A, including public safety facilities. Package B, the community facilities such as parks and recreation, as well as an event center/library. And Package C, some streets and infrastructure that we could help with as well with these projects. What you see here is a project timeline. If you've never done a bond before, when we ask for the monies, we're not necessarily asking for all the dollars tomorrow. What we're asking for is a total spend, and then we can pull those bonds as necessary over a timeline, which helps to keep the tax rate lower as we move forward with these bonds on that. So instead of having everything right up front and paying a huge portion, we can slowly ask for the monies as needed. Council can continue to go back and get new bonds, especially if we get lower interest rates at certain times, things like that. So this is something that we looked at as well, that our recommendation was to pull based on a timeline. I did notice that this presentation does say that some of the funds were being pulled this quarter already. So the timeline's a little off on the timing. But obviously we would move this forward to match a bond election if we were to do that in May.
Just a quick question, Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Detmer. So on the ballot, this is what our citizens would see is Package A, yes or no, Package B, yes or no, Package C, yes or no.
Yes, Ms. Delgado.
Oh, okay.
So what they would typically see is something going to be along the lines like for fire, for the public, it would be for public safety facilities to include a few, name a few items, such as the streets and infrastructure. It might just be a road bond package. Okay. We wouldn't limit it specifically to those streets because then you are limited specifically to those streets. Okay. But we could generally limit, name as few projects in there. A lot of this would be depending on how it's marketed as it goes out to the citizens of showing this is what we want it for, this is why we're asking. But ultimately, yeah, the ballot would be public safety facility, a parks and recreation package, and then a road package. Yes. So this is a little bit of the timeline, and you'll see a little bit later why this is so important, why we felt that we could break this out into a timeline rather than just say everything tomorrow as we plan for it. Next is going to be the estimated costs and what we are recommending for these packages. And we'll get into the details a little bit more as we go along. For the fire, or what we're calling public safety facilities, primarily is fire. Our biggest need right now is improvements to Fire Station 2. It's our newest facility, but as Chief Briggs has brought to our attention, it has already been outgrown very quickly with the growth of our city, and that's why it's the very first thing on that page we just came from, is to remodel and grow that second facility. As a bond committee, we felt the next thing that was really needed is a new Station 1 for the Central. Our current one right behind us here right now is already vastly outgrown. And based on the location, we kind of felt that it would be better to build a new Station 1 on the south side of the tracks to facilitate. Chief Briggs had brought to our attention having a 3-station, and you'll see some of the slides here, having 3 stations ultimately in the future within the next 5 to 10 years is based on our growth is what the city's going to need to provide complete coverage. So that's why we have that. So Station 3 is on there.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yes,
Was
ma'am.
there any discussion on a training facility for fire?
There is. At this time, there was a couple different things. One, at the time it was brought, we didn't necessarily include that as part of this package. It was discussed. At our last meeting, and Chief Briggs, you might have to help me with this, there was a discussion that we might be able to combine that with Station 1 or some other facilities in. There's some other abilities to possibly still do a training facility without putting it on the bond as part of
Is this something
that.
we could partner with the school district for as well? Possibly?
I've had one meeting with the school district 7 months ago. I haven't heard another word about it. Yes, it is a viable option to look into. There's space in the Station 1 footprint for a training tower. It's not a complete training facility. You would get us credit with the state for having a tower, which is one piece of a training facility that they look at. Those are all things that need to be discussed and explored.
Okay.
What the different avenues are to give the ability to train locally without having to send everybody back.
Can we have ever thought about combining a training facility with maybe Terrell
Mhm.
and come together as one and we have both training the same split costs?
Yes, that was discussed as well during the bond committees, is that there are multiple different ways to look at it, looking at partnering with Garland and other surrounding cities who are renting from Terrell, who are renting in Garland just like we are.
And I think Terrell,
Before with different fire departments and stuff, we usually people that comes over, you know how we all operate. So I like that better.
Yes.
I think Terrell, is there not a training facility in Maybank as well?
There is an existing, that's the one that we're using on a very limited basis, but it's an extended travel time.
Yeah.
Majority of the conversations that we had about training, anything outside of just us, grew outside the scope of the bonding process, and so we kind of stopped there because it's a completely different path.
Thank you.
No problem. Fire station number 3 is on here, as we do see that that's a need potentially in the next 5 to 10 years very quickly as the city continues to grow. If growth suddenly stopped, that is always something that we don't necessarily have to pull that bond. And again, why we stretch things out over time. A bond is simply asking the citizens, can we do this? Do we have your permission? That doesn't necessarily mean we have to, depending on if things change in the future. So that's what we have on there. Second package is our community facilities for parks and recreation. The first item on here you'll notice is an event center / library, and we'll go over that a little bit in just a moment, what that includes. But this would not just be an event center, be able to hold things such as about, I believe it's 1,000 seat capacity total, but it would be able to be broken up into smaller meeting rooms and used for all different kinds of things. It could be used for town hall meetings. It could be used for all different kinds of things, rented out, full service kitchen. We'll get into all that in a little bit. But it would also be shared with the library, which would bring back a city library, which I know is a big desire here in the city right now. That was where we were able to combine a need with a want in this case, I feel. And we had a lot of positive feedback regarding that. The new Northside Park was identified by your Parks Board and recommended to the Bond Committee. For those of you who are aware, Mulberry is a money pit. It is going to take a lot to remodel and bring it up to date and what's necessary there. What's been identified by the Parks Board back in the master plan of 2016 was the need to facilitate our citizens on the north side as well as help the Mulberry events that are out there and sports that are out there. The Northside Park, we'll get into what it offers our citizens and those coming, but it would allow baseball to move from Mulberry and give them a new facility just like soccer and softball already have at Community Park, as well as some provide a lot more needs that we have, such as multi-use fields and things like that. The second is the finishing phase 2, which includes a rec center. You'll notice this is one of the larger ticket items on this entire bond. The rec center is something that could be considered taken off or left on. That's up to you guys. Our recommendation at this time was to leave it on. When we did the survey from the citizens, a lot of the requests that they had were both for things that would fit in an event center / library, but would also fit a rec center. So although I think a lot of the citizens were thinking of an event center, a lot of those items would be taken care of by a rec center.
Yes.
In that aspect.
I just want to clarify on that. That includes the road that punches through to Holly
Yes.
Trail?
Yes,
Lake?
Hollyleaf. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. back to my neighborhood. Yes, that also includes a trail, and it includes a bridge, which is a big ticket item on there as well. But it would give us a connector basically for Justice Way. I believe that's the continuation of Justice Way through the park all the way to Hollyleaf, which is the backside of McKellar Place.
Yeah, that's a very expensive project because of the bridge.
Because of the bridge.
And for everybody who goes in and out of Community Park during July 4th knows you only go back out to 548. So this would allow an outlet to the other side, which is very
And
needed.
also, when there's things like accidents at 741, 548, it would allow another east-west connector outlet for that area as well on FM 548. So it does include the rec center. It does also include, and we'll get to that as well in this in these next ones. Last is streets and infrastructure, sort of a road bond package. The first question that was brought up, and I'll be first to say it was me, was what can we do to help the FM roads? And based on the survey, traffic was the number one concern of our citizens. After meeting with the consultant from Kaufman County and talking with Mr. Zook, and his presentation to you all on October 19th was absolutely wonderful. Our road bond packages from 2013 and 2019 with the county have already produced those first two steps, that 20% to TxDOT for a lot of the FM projects. So at this time, it was the recommendation that we look at more in the city, smaller connectors and things like that we might be able to affect that can help traffic problems because those FM roads are already being taken care of by TxDOT. So they include a couple roads. We discussed a lot more, but this is ultimately what we came down to. Updating Ranch Road. As you know, there's about to be a high school built in that area as well. This would be from the light at 740 Benson Road right there, up to the county line of Ranch Road, making it, I believe, Carl, you'll have to help me on this, is it 4 lanes with a median, turning median, and a light at it's the ISD road that comes out to Ranch Road. So before, having this done to go in conjunction with the new middle school there, as well as the high school that's coming, would help with traffic concerns. The next on the north side would also be Lover's Lane. It's currently a little 2-lane blacktop road. If you've ever driven down it, it's a nice little drive. But being in such close proximity to that same area that we're discussing, we felt that this would help alleviate traffic problems, particularly while we're waiting on FM 740 from TxDOT. So it's only a couple hundred feet, I believe, from the current entrance to that middle school on 740 right now. Opening it to 4 lanes. I don't know if it was it a median turn or just a 4 lanes? It's assuming a median there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and visiting with COG and things like that, TxDOT may provide some monies there because we would be connecting 2 of their roads, the service road of Highway 80 to FM 740. So although this is, if we did it completely ourselves, there may be some monies there available to us in the future when we do that, if we do that update. And then lastly was a new road growing from the Monitor connector, which the Bellagio project is to extend Monitor into their area. That connects to Lakemont Drive, Lakemont Way or Lakemont Drive. And this road would connect from Monitor all the way over to FM's 548. It would possibly include some bridges, as there's a wetland area that would be part of that. This would have some connectors potentially to the Forney High School as well to help alleviate a lot of the traffic on FM 741. As we get to the pictures, you'll see a little bit more what we're talking about. But everything in here is estimated. Obviously, the inflation for some of the ones you'll notice, such as Community Park Phase 2, our current projected cost was around $70 million. If you look at when our recommended construction bond was for $84.7, the reason being is if you go back to our timeline, it's one of the later projects that we pull. So obviously, estimated costs would go up if we did it, in 5 to 10 years from now versus tomorrow. So that's why you'll see those increases. If we'll go to Package A, I'll go through a little bit more here. This is our current fire service area with Fire Station 1 right here in downtown and then Fire Station 2 of what we currently have. And if we'll go to the next slide, this is what we currently feel is needed for the future. This says 26, 27. It may be a little bit longer than that, but you'll notice that it's more of a triangulation of the fire stations where we've moved Fire Station 1 to the south side. That's not an exact location. There's no location determined by the bond committee. This will be up to council, but our recommendation. to build a new fire station 1, and ultimately a third station to service more towards the west side, as what we've discussed. Next slide is new Central Fire Station number 1 is a larger facility. There's a lot of information on there for you. It does possibly include, like Chief Briggs said, area for a tower. And this is what we feel is something that's going to be needed fairly soon, as we've already outgrown 1 and 2 currently. But our Station 1 that we currently have right now is just so small. It's trying to remodel it there's not enough room. So a new Station 1 and being south side of the tracks to effectively serve if there's trains and things like that is what we feel. Fire Station 2, the additions, I think the biggest issue Chief Briggs brought up was bunks to house the staff that we need there. So this would be an extension for the bay and fitness area. I believe it may include some bunks and things like that. This would be the very first project we recommend that is needed immediately for the bond. And then a smaller Station 3, again out there more towards the west to give us that triangle to service all of the city of Forney limits on there. Any questions for that? Okay. Package B. First is our event center and community library. This is a very, very, very rough drawing. Obviously, at the time that we go, we would have much more drawings for the bond packages to go out in marketing and everything else. But the idea would be to cover, and you'll see all the bullet points there, but over 1,000 people in the large event space, flexible event room, which includes the walls. That's what we're talking about. That large area can be broken down into much smaller rooms. These could be for anything and everything from, we discussed weddings, receptions, community events. We could, small classes, art classes could be brought in there. The potential to help with our seniors at this new event center, rather than being here at City Hall, be able to move them and give them their own space is part of our thing. There's many, many things available and offered there. The library being attached to that. You'll see this around town, even like in Arlington, they just built a large community center, including a library attached to it. That's how they're able to provide the funding a lot easier than a standalone library. And so these type of things are what's going and what we recommend that would help service our community with this. Any questions on that? This next slide is just a master plan of what we have. You'll notice the little blue star there on the north side. That is the area that we do currently have. Is it 50 or 51 acres, Kyle? Oh, 64 acres. I apologize. 64 acres for the Northside Park available to us. This was identified almost 12 years ago on the current master plan to service the north side and give us a new location with facilities for our community, and would be what we're discussing there. You see Forney Community Park is in the middle, which we currently have, but is already outdated and still needs a lot more to serve our community, because at the time we did the 2006 bond, we only did phase 1 and we never came back for phase 2. And then that little green one over there is Mulberry to the left on the west side, and that we feel would be a better in the next bond to go back and do something with Mulberry.
What are they updated today?
I'm sorry?
What are they updated?
We'll get to phase 2 here on Community Park, I believe in the next slide after this. Northside Park would include a baseball facility. It would give them a completely new place, and that would ultimately turn Mulberry into a practice facility, which was kind of the idea all along when we started with Community Park to begin with, by moving all the youth sports to the new facilities. There's walking trails, ponds. You'll notice a nice sized parking lot. There is a large open space in that baseball complex, which would also allow for things like small community events. We could do some concerts, movies in the park type things out there as well. And on the far south side there, you'll notice a small skate park area, potentially. That's been a high requested item on a lot of our park surveys that have been done in the past. And part of the playground equipment, the bond committee brought up and felt very strongly that with that playground equipment, we should also look to do playground equipment for special needs. We have a large community here in Forney with special needs children and adults, and that could be something that we're not serving currently that we should be. The little piece broken off there to the side is actually on the far, far north corner, and it gives us a couple multi-use fields and another pond up there. Multi-use fields is one of our biggest needs in the parks and rec right now, is having enough for both soccer, football, cheerleading, everything under the sun, having lighted practice fields and multi-use fields. So you'll notice that on this drawing in, when we get to phase 2 Community Park, there's a lot of multi-use fields included.
Nate, can you explain, give me a reference on the roads of where we are?
Sure, and I apologize, I should explain this. So the road where the entrance and exit, the primary entrance and exit there, lead out to Reeder Road, along Reeder right before. You'll notice in the bottom and the south side, the white top buildings there is part of the antique row, and behind on 217. The arrow going through the middle, and does it have a red dot on it by chance? I don't know if you can see the arrow that just below the last baseball field there with the curve to it that leads out towards, that is the potential for the new Ridgecrest extension that can actually go through. So some new drawings might have to, since it would cut through the park area, we'll have to do some new drawings there. But with Ridgecrest extension was something that was brought up by the bond committee, and since it was something that was taken over by the new development contract, this offers another ingress and egress for the park as well as for the city out to Reeder Road.
Quick question, and it might be a question for Kyle. You mentioned that Mulberry will just become like a practice facility more than the place where they actually play games. Is it
Yes.
going to take money to get that up to where it needs to be? Because I know that it's, like you said, a money pit. So how much money is it going to cost to kind of get Mulberry up to speed?
I don't know if
just
we
to
have,
be a practice facility, or are we just going to leave it the way it is?
it could pretty much stay the way it is.
Okay.
We've been slapping Band-Aids on it for years. It should have been redone 20 years ago. But the problem with Mulberry, if you're not aware, it's a giant pit.
It's a bowl.
It's
Yeah.
literally a bowl. And what needs to happen is everything needs to be leveled. It needs to be brought up, built up, and then completely redone as a new park. So it's a massive undertaking. To put Mulberry on this bond right now, you would effectively remove baseball and give them any place to play until either Mulberry or Northside was done.
Okay.
So the idea by doing Northside Park and moving baseball up there, softball, who's currently practicing on their game fields, and baseball, who's practicing on their game fields at Mulberry, would now have game facilities and then practice facilities at Mulberry until we come back on another bond and then remodel Mulberry.
Great, thank you.
Kyle, was there a number to Mulberry by chance?
Yeah, it was about $8 million. That's why when that was the first thing that we kind of made the recommendation to the bond committee, was it wasn't nearly worth it at all to make that when you couldn't even guarantee that it would necessarily help. I mean, it's the drainage issue, and we talked with Carl about that, and the $8 million was almost an unknown.
Next slide there is going to be Community Park Phase 2. Most of this are more on the north side of the park. That was the area that was undeveloped in the last, when we first did the park. You'll notice there is the road there leading from Justice Way straight across above multi-purpose fields 1 and 2 that goes out to Hollyleaf just past the animal shelter out there and connects. You'll notice a couple more multi-use fields just north of that and additional parking by the family rec area to facilitate both family rec and those multi-purpose fields. The large parking lot there on the north side and the white building right there is the potential rec center. The current Spellman building would be demolished and the park offices would then reside in the new rec center when it's built. There are a couple more tennis courts and then of course multi-use fields. Again, that's our biggest need is these lighted multi-use fields as we're growing right now. Soccer may potentially in the next year or two reach 2,000 kids in participation. It's been growing on average, Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe about 200 kids per season or per year.
Yeah, that's correct. The one other thing that I want to mention is the potential for the third water tank on the community park site. We're basically planning for that to happen 10 years, 15 years down the road, whenever that need comes across. But I just want to make a note that was on there.
What about more tennis courts out there?
This has additional 3 more tennis courts added in this.
3 does, yeah, today is
Yeah, it's always so booked.
Yeah. And of course, I have to mention it on the south side there, we're in the floodplain where you can't build anything else. We have a slated disc golf course.
Is pickleball been included in this?
Not that I'm aware of. And again, these are just a general draft drawings of what can be done. If a bond is approved, ultimately the design work would begin. That would then be, the recommendations and what, if we need to adjust anything. If there's a potential to do like a skate park in phase 2 instead of on the north side and we do something else. I mean, those things can all be adjusted. These are generally what we would like to take to the public to do at the time. Once the bond's approved, some things do change a little bit. When phase 1 was done, Spellman Amphitheater was supposed to seat about 150 to 200 people. And that changed. So things do change and can be done. So if pickleball courts or things like that would need to be added, that could be looked at for sure.
We have hot summers most of the time. Does anyone ever discuss Approximate?
The natatorium is something that is probably the most highly requested item that we ever get on every park sports or on every park survey. It's been discussed many times over the years. The problem is that typically they're money pits, to be honest with you. The cost to build them and then to maintain them, typically a natatorium is almost $1 million a year just in maintenance between staffing and everything else with it.
And the school district is already building one.
Yeah, and the school district is building their own natatorium now. There have been some good models in the past years, such as I want to say Denton built a natatorium with an outdoor sliding facility, like kind of like a Hawaiian Falls or Wet and Wild type. Sorry, I just dated myself with Wet and Wild. Hurricane Harbor, where they help offset the cost of the natatorium by using an outdoor parks facility, lazy river and some slides and things like that. But just cost wise and to fill as much needs as we have right now, again, that's more of a want than a need at this point, with the ISD building their own natatorium to be used. So Parks Board didn't make that recommendation, and Bond Committee, we really didn't discuss much of a natatorium for that reason.
Yeah, we didn't. I thought the ISD was going to make certain services available to the public.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Kind of thing, so that's why we didn't, because it's been on that list for a long time. Yes.
And you have Bellagio, coming
So
as well. Yeah, it was just a cost versus what it fulfills. A rec center right now would fulfill a lot more needs that we have with what we have. Sure.
Bellagio.
I'll catch you out there windsurfing, right? Next is our road bond package, and I'll go ahead and move over to the next slide here. As we already discussed, Ranch Road, basically from Valley View to FM 740, it would include a light, and we'll get to that here in just a second. Lover's Lane going from 740 to Highway 80, the service road there, and then the new connector on the south side from 548 to Monitor on there. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. These numbers are if we built it tomorrow, and what was in the other slide is based on our timeline of how we spread things out, if you will. So there's going to be estimated inflation and interests on the loans and things like on the bonds, et cetera. So in this map, you can kind of see the locations of what we're talking about. Up there at the very top is the Ranch Road, and that is in that new area where the ISD has built the middle school, and we'll be building a third high school. I believe we're also going to be talking with the county commissioner about continuing this Ranch Road beyond what we can do as well to help service that area, but that'll be up to the county from there. But we're trying to do what we can, particularly with that road that connects there to the high school and middle school. That's going to be an ingress and egress for all those students and staff and faculty. there. The next one on the little bit to the west and south of that is Lover's Lane. You'll see it connects there from 740. You notice in gray is 740 and 460. Those are projects that TxDOT's already working on, as you've seen previously. Excuse me. Until they grow, Lovers, again, we felt was both needed to be updated, as well as it would provide more traffic relief in the meantime until we get 740 improved by TxDOT. On the south side, you will see the 741 highlighted there from 20 going up to roughly the high school right there in front of Lighthouse Daycare. And then a small gray line south of that. That's the Monitor extension that Bellagio is continuing for us as part of their contract. The small yellow line is that connector between Monitor and 548. There is a large wetland area there, and there's a lot of considerations and bridges, but Carl presented that he felt that we could definitely work with that and potentially work with ISD to give them some connectors so they would actually, both for games at Citibank as well as school, they would have more, because right now everybody has to get out through 741 only, and that's it. So this would provide a secondary inlet and outlet for the school and things like that, as well as an east-west connector. So if somebody wanted to skip more of the school zone during the afternoons and mornings, they could get around the high school without it. Next thing is for y'all, these are our recommendations of what we've made for y'all to review and discuss, as Mr. Thatcher brought, what you'd like from there. And then from there, if you decide to move forward, obviously things that we would need is to begin engaging and educating our key community groups, things like the library group, to have their support, obviously baseball and some of the youth sports, getting involved in other, the seniors, and all the groups that could help us potentially with looking for bond approval. The next slide is the fun one that everybody loves, the potential tax rate. As you see, it's almost similar to a small mountain. I call it the old bell curve. The reason we stretched out and did these projects over a period of time rather than doing everything all at once is so that it would help to keep this tax rate down. As you pull bonds, obviously at the beginning, there's a higher tax rate. As we pay it down, it continues to decrease. By spreading these projects out over time, we also were to help to keep the rate down over time. This is purely estimated by Hilltop. As you know, the interest rates and so forth are subject to change between now and when we actually pull each bond and each part of the bonds. But potentially the total growth would be approximately 35.5 cents at the peak to our current tax rate. That's about $29.58 or $30 per $100 value of a home monthly for our citizens. And I think that's about it, unless you have any other questions. Again, it's just an estimation. So these are how those assumptions and estimates are made. Simply just the issuance dates, as well as the term and the potential interest rates. They gave us a little bit bigger numbers than what some of the interest rates are now, but we don't know what the market's going to do between now and then. Lately, they've been incredibly low, as we were told. But obviously that can change day to day and year by year. So we had to use an estimation to give the best guess as we could for that. Oh, I apologize. On the previous slide, I was just going to mention, since it was roughly $30 or $29.58 per $100,000 value, in March, our current home value here in Forney, the average was $239. It was $239,000. It may be closer to $250 or more now, but the average home value in Forney was $239. Did I say that right? Was it $239? Was it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. It may have been last year's. I apologize. It was $239. And then just our last, the tax rate and property value history. As you can see, the property values have been going up, but our tax rate has slowly been coming down, as you see there. And just a little bit about our community engagement of. You don't have to speak to this one because I'm not familiar with this slide. Go ahead.
Yeah, the community engagement, as Nate eloquently put, this has been a process with 724 respondents to a survey. I know it's a lot to take in, but this is about 6 to 8 months of committee input, partial council input, staff feedback, and so to stress the next step, this is not a small effort. This is an entire community endeavor to ask the voters for additional tax increase is definitely a weighty thing. And so the next part of this is kind of the tough work. We thought the bond committee was the tough work. So the next steps would be for council to consider this and really get out to the community, to get to churches, schools, groups, different civic organizations, and not make this sound like this is coming from a small group. And so kind of our next steps, Mr. Thatcher Mr. Daniels can speak to kind of some of our next steps in a future council meeting after we get a chance to kind of go over this information. But we wanted to stress that this is an entire warning. The survey we put out had some of the widest demographics that we've seen. We do this for public entities, and we put it on Facebook, and the demographics were in the 20s. We sent out the mailers, and that jumped everything up. But the 724 respondents in the survey, we read every single comment. The bond committee considered all aspects. We looked at every city facility, and so we appreciate your time tonight. Trying to convey 6 months and 15, 20 minutes here. We certainly appreciate the time listening to this. And if you have any questions?
I just want to say thank you for a great presentation. This is a wealth of information, and I speak for the council. We're looking forward to going over this over the next month or so, but you guys have done a great job. And I even like the way that it's packaged up, because it allows us to pull in so many different ambassadors in the city. You'll have kids who want a new baseball field, and you'll have people who want the library, all working together, trying to get the same package, passed through. So lots of opportunities for good marketing to be able to push it through. Great job.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other
Mayor,
questions? I'm sorry.
we do have a request to speak on this matter.
I'm sorry?
We have someone that wanted to speak.
Sure, absolutely. Any other questions for Mr. Detmer?
Mr. Detmer, will you be our social media influencer for the bond package?
Depends on what day it is. No, I'm just kidding.
I just wanted to say thank you for all your months of meetings and being a volunteer and stepping up. So thank you.
I appreciate it very, very much. And I think the whole marketing campaign and what's coming around the corner is going to be critical. So it's going to be, we're all going to work together. So I appreciate that. If there's no further questions, then I'll ask for public comment.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you, Nate.
Flower Escamilla.
Hi, good evening.
Madam Mayor and Council, my name is Flower Escamilla, President of Citizens for Forney Area Library. We're a citizen-led nonprofit organization dedicated to helping establish and accredit a library in our community. I want to first take the time to thank you, Mayor and Council members, for your time today in hearing us speak on this important issue, and to the city staff whom we've had productive conversations with over the last several months. I also want to thank the Bond Committee and WRA Architects, especially Mr. White here, for their work and dedication. While the circumstances in which Ellen Brooks West Memorial Library was unfortunate and caused a tremendous amount of controversy, the overwhelming response by residents also quickly demonstrated how important a library is to our community, and it rallied folks to take action. Since the formation of our group, we've focused on being proactive and finding temporary solutions to address the gap in access to books. And we've been thrilled at the level of support that our community has shown for our projects and for our overall mission of bringing an accredited library to the Forney area. I would like to now take the time to state that having a public library in Forney is a community-wide decision involving residents and stakeholders working together in partnership. When we learned the city brought on WRA to work with the Bond Committee, we were excited, as WRA's connection to our community goes back to when they helped build Ellen Brooks. They understand the importance of involving local residents in the process, which they did in a community survey this past fall. In our conversations with WRA, we stressed the vital importance of library accreditation as it enables a foundation and provides a standard. To bring optimal growth to our community, we must nurture culture, diversity, the arts, education, community programs, and healthy living, which can be done with one public entity, a public library. We appreciate the City of Forney's consideration of a public library as part of a future bond package, and we now invite you and the residents of Forney to invest and support in our community's future. If and when this bond menu has been passed, we look forward to the continued partnership with the City of Forney on the development of this new community epicenter for residents to enjoy now and in the future. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you, Ms. Buchanan. Thank you. Ms. Brooks, is there anybody else? Well, if there's no further discussion, we'll move on to the next action item. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Gave us a lot to think about, and we'll be meeting again. So thank you.